Welcome to the Gladden Longevity Podcast with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, where our passion is helping you to become an age hacker. On this show, we want to help you optimize your life energy, longevity, health, and human performance with impactful and actionable information by answering 4 questions. How good can we be? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live well beyond 120? And how do we live young for a lifetime? Now, here's today's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast.
I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden. I'm flying solo today. Steve is off playing hooky again. I'm not sure why. That being said, I just finished an interview with Rene, R-E-N-E, Liaw, L-I-A-W. Rene is basically a software engineer who trained in Toronto. He has developed a real passion for optimizing health through different supplements, and he's come across a really, really interesting natural product out of a spruce tree in Finland and Norway, actually. And I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. This is a product that we've been using now for about 5 or 6 months, which is we wanted to do that before we invited him on the show. And we're seeing some really nice results with it. I think you're going to be really interested to hear how this works and the broad spectrum of impacts that it's having for people. This is a really interesting conversation.
This episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast is brought to you by Mimeo, a supplement designed to give people the benefits of fasting without having to fast.
Yeah, Mimeo's research found that the human body produces a unique set of molecules during the 36-hour fast. And those molecules were responsible for activating many of the cellular health and longevity benefits of fasting.
With Mimeo, you can get the cellular health and metabolic benefits of a 36-hour fast even during a meal, or you can use it to maximize the benefits of your shorter fasts with powerful boosts in mood, focus, energy, performance, recovery, and appetite control. Dr. Gladden, in the 2 years I've been working with you and the 5+ years I've been listening to this show, I've never heard you talk about something outside the Gladden Longevity line of products like I've heard you talk about Mimeo. Why do you like it so much? Use it and make it a part of some of your presentations.
Yeah, we love it, quite honestly. I mean, the idea of Mimeo being able to mimic fasting, we all know the benefits of fasting, is dramatic in and of itself. And even in the context of if you're eating, and if you're fasting, it even augments your fast that much more. But the interesting thing is that it also decreases things like neuroinflammation, it suppresses appetite, and it increases a very, very important biological process called reverse cholesterol transport. And that's critical for cardiovascular disease, for decreasing risk of dementia, cancer, etc. It's really, it's quite a fascinating product. I've really been kind of blown away by it.
As a way to help support this podcast and save money on your Mimeo order, you can use the discount code GLADDEN10 to get 10% off your order at mimeohealth.com. That's that code again, mimeohealth.com. That code again, GLADDEN10 at MIMIO health.com.
Think of it as a way to unlock the power of your biology. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and I'm here today with Rene Liaw. Rene and I are going to talk about an interesting topic. It's called Fountain of Life. You may have heard of Fountain Life, which is a program that's been put together to try to look at longevity. People can argue how effective or ineffective it is. That being said, this is different. This is actually a product that you consume called Fountain of Life. And Rene, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gladden. Great to be here again, as always.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we had a chance to chat maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Fountain of Life here. What's your background?
Yeah, so basically, I actually studied at the University of Toronto, in downtown Toronto here in software engineering.
Okay.
And so I actually was by trade a software engineer. So I worked for IBM, TELUS, and I was doing programming. But I guess where my path kind of had a fork in the road, so to speak, was when my father ended up losing a lot of stocks from this company called Nortel. And long story short, all his savings were gone. And from that moment onwards, his health just went down the drain. So he ended up having, 2 heart attacks. He had, I guess, overeaten, and so he had to remove a huge part of his intestines. It was infected, it was inflamed, from diabetes to blood pressure to fatty liver to high cholesterol to gout and all these things. So I was really worried about him. So
what was the initial thing that triggered all that?
Yeah, so my sister worked for a huge startup IT company called Nortel Networks. And my dad bought into that stock because my sister worked there, right? And so the stocks went from $10 to $80, $100. All the money in there. Turned out that they had actually had some, I guess someone was misrepresenting the actual books, and so it was overvalued. And so and to make it worse, when it was going down, he kept buying in on the down. So it was bad. It was bad,
So your dad basically lost everything on that particular
his whole life savings, everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And that, of course, was probably incredibly stressful for him. And so a lot of depression, maybe overeating, whatever else, right? So,
yeah. And also he comes from Malaysia, which is a family of 13 siblings. And being the middle one, when food was put on the table, they would always try to, fight for food. So I think that history led him to always eating everything on the table, which is overeating all the time. Yeah. So there's just a combination of everything.
Wow. Yeah.
He's been now though, just for the
Is he good now?
Yeah. This changed everything for him. Yeah.
Okay. So just the audience couldn't see that, but Rene just held up a bottle of Fountain of Life. So that's interesting in and of itself. So you took a detour, and so take us down that road a little further.
Yeah, I just started to read a lot of books and try to understand, about the body and healthy living. And I have actually spent a lot of time and money actually just, investing in different products for my dad to try. He always liked to kind of go with the medication route. And I kind of had learned that it's not really a cure. It's more like a Band-Aid solution. And so we're trying to find, my sister and I, a more natural solution. So I've been looking at all kinds of natural products for the last about 20 years now. Yeah. And just kept trying to find what would work, from here to Asia and back. So I do travel the world a lot. Yeah.
You just got back from Asia, I think you said.
2 nights ago. We were in, I was in the Philippines first, and then off to Taiwan, Japan, and then Taiwan, and back to Canada now. So.
Okay. All right. That's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
So basically, you became really interested in healthy living, and you started to source different things that might be an asset to you in that quest. And then tell us about how you bumped into the Fountain of Life people.
Yeah, so it's, back about 2007, I was still, still doing my usual sort of, IT work, like really heavily working with different sort of naturopaths and learning more. So I came across basically the owner of this company, a Fountain of Life's owner, and so he had seen, I guess, that I had some passion, some drive, and perhaps we kind of just clicked really well. So just sort of, passively working with him, I was sharing with him a lot about sort of, my father as well too. And so we initially didn't have health products, but the CEO of this company, coming from the wrestling background, he was a gold champion for Canada. Yeah, he was also into health too. And so we were initially doing another business together, and luck have it, we met a scientist in Finland was actually the head scientist for the Fountain of Life. And when we learned about what it really was, we got so excited. We all got the product, his hair grew back, my hair grew back. I was actually thinning hair reform. We got my dad on the product, and myself too. A year later, his health is impeccable, so that's kind of how we got into it.
Yeah. So fascinating. So you went to Scandinavia, and you bumped into a scientist over there in Finland. So tell us what that story was like. What was it like pulling back the curtain on this? And what was he explaining to you and showing you and things like that to get you excited?
No, thank you for giving me the time to share this really funny story. So basically, we wanted to initially develop the world's most sort of advanced anti-aging skincare line. So we had fashion products. We thought, all Greek designers have their skincare line too. And so So we actually hired Estee Lauder or L'Oreal, a billion-dollar company. We actually hired their top formulator, and his name was Tom. And so we actually sort of gave Tom a mandate, create us the most powerful anti-aging product you can think of. And he asked, what's the budget? And so our CEO gave him a blank check. He's like, well, what does that mean? He said, well, our CEO doesn't care about the budget. He wants you to just source the absolute best ingredients. And so, our skin being one of the largest organs of the body, the formulator wanted to source the best antioxidant he could think of that was available at that time. And so that's when he introduced us to the main scientist in Finland. And so, so the funny thing is we actually have a anti-aging skincare line that has the fat sulfite extract inside of that.
Oh, wow.
But the way it became this, though, was because when we finally met the scientist, we didn't know his age. We thought he was probably in his late 40s, maybe mid 40s. And we then found out he's like almost pushing 70. And, and he's not like Asian, where Asians typically have, their skin, whatever it is.
Right.
And so like, what's your secret? Like, what are you doing to stay young? And he goes, well, this ingredient that you have in your product. Well, I actually just drink it. And we're like, excuse me, you're actually drinking one of the ingredients.
Right. You're drinking skin cream? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so we said, well, like, is it good? And he tells us all these things and all these studies that they've been working on. We're like, well, why is it not out yet for production for the public for oral consumption? And he goes, well, and unfortunately with all scientists, they have great ideas, but sometimes when it comes to marketing and funding, they're always right. So long story short, we as a company made a huge global sort of exclusive rights deal with him where we actually fund him. We went to Health Canada, applied for, of course, the oral consumption. That's how it came to be. And we actually asked him, where did he source this product from? And maybe we can share that story.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about where he started to source it from, and then some of the scientific information that he gave you that obviously made you want to pursue this.
So his story was that in his home he had this big Norwegian spruce tree that was blocking the light to the kitchen, and his wife says, husband, cut this tree down because it's blocking the light. When he cut the tree down, he actually noticed that the broken branches that he had cut off from the tree on the ground were still alive, and the furs didn't sort of die off. Most tree branches, the leaves, So he's like, and he actually took one of the branches, he just wrapped it up and he threw it in his freezer and, threw away his backyard. And a few years later, his wife was cleaning out the freezer and found this wrapped up tree branch. He's like, well, what is this thing? Do something with it or I'm going to toss it in the garbage. And when he opened it up, he realized that the broken end of the branch that got cut off had grown itself a new layer and was still kicking. It was still alive, basically.
Wow. And
so he's like, okay, something's got to be interesting about this particular tree compared to the average tree.
Right.
And that's when he realized that the lignans, which is the plant antioxidants, was doing a measurement of the lignans, and it was just thousands upon thousands of times more potent and more condensed than perhaps your fruits and vegetables. And so that's where he got this idea from. And lignans actually have been studied for the past 20, 30 years, actually. But,
so let's spell that for the audience. It's Ligans, lignan, or Lignans.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, lignans. So it's Lignans. Lignans. And so that's not, we've heard of legumes and we've heard of lectins, but this is lignans, right? So, so it's different. Just as you're listening to this, it's a different molecule than anything. And so tell us a little bit about the lignans. It does have an antioxidant capacity that's very high. Anything else about it that's interesting?
Yeah. So, I do have, some information where we actually have comparisons of lignans in your fruits, your vegetables, your drinks, seeds, and nuts. And I guess on planet Earth, previously the highest source of lignans was the flaxseed. And so flaxseed compared to, like, let's say kale or broccoli or apricot, which is very high in lignans, the flaxseed had literally about 30,000 times more lignans than these other basic vegetables.
Okay.
Now, Fountain of Life, when we did the actual measurement here, we have 17 times more lignans than the flaxseed.
Okay.
And so it's just something that we naturally, in a long time ago, we as humans had it in our diets, but with today's processing and whatever,
Sure.
it's really gone now. So it is an the world's most sort of, as we know, the most powerful plant antioxidant in lignans. It's also anti-inflammatory because it comes from a wood extract. So that's another one of the huge benefits. It's also antimicrobial and antibacterial. And now, of course, there's studies on it being anti-tumor and things like anti-cancer. One of the other really key benefits is that lignans are also a phytoestrogen. And so for the viewers, that's great for, of course, for balancing hormones for men and for women. So we've seen women with, menopause, for example, hair falling out, the hot flashes are gone, no more mood swings. For the men, especially as we age, with the phytoestrogens enlarging the prostate, a lot of men are seeing, no more peeing at nighttime. Of course, the DHT, that is another issue with hormone balance that can cause hair loss. That stops for men too. And so like my hair used to have gaps in between. And now it's really just full sort of head of hair too. And so
nice.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So just so the audience understands, DHT is dihydrotestosterone. So when you make testosterone, it gets metabolized down different pathways. And one of those is to dihydrotestosterone, which has the benefits of helping you build muscle and bone and improves libido and things like that. But the downside is that it activates receptors on the hair follicle that can cause the hair follicle to shrink. And then eventually kind of fade away, which is associated with male pattern baldness, and also can occur in women as well that are predisposed. So hair thinning in general can be driven by excessive amounts of DHT. And if you take testosterone topically, as opposed to injecting it, as it goes through the skin, as the testosterone is metabolized through the skin, it creates even more DHT than it would if you gave yourself the testosterone intramuscularly. So balancing testosterone, free testosterone, and the amount of DHT is important because DHT can also drive prostate issues and even prostate cancer. So, so balancing all that out becomes important. And then, one of the things that we can use is something that stimulates estrogen receptors, like genistein is good at this, and it can help modulate estrogen effects, if you will, bring them help back into balance. So it sounds like this fountain of life is not only giving you the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory pieces, but now is actually working in that arena as well in terms of balancing hormones.
Yeah, and also the other really interesting thing is that people were actually putting the fountain of life sort of in their shampoo, for their hair as well too. And they saw great success. But then people that had, for example, like, scars or things like, mosquito bites, wounds, cuts, like blood leaking out. And we found that actually, even for skin cancer, is that FL1 can help to stop, I guess, the bleeding. It helps to also repair things a lot faster. So for injuries, bee stings, mosquito bites, it seems to be like the one product you can use from the top of the head of your hair down to the bottom of your feet.
Okay.
Things
outside
like
and inside. Sounds like you can put it everywhere.
Yeah, literally, people that put it, and then myself personally, I travel so much, and one of the things that I used to have a problem with was, like, for example, jet lag, and you're on the cold plane to hot Asian climates to high AC hotel rooms to lack of sleep, and I just have a lot of sore throat, speaking a lot. And one of the things what Fountain of Life is when you put it in your throat. So the best way of taking it, of course, is leaving it under the tongue, sublingually, so about 5 seconds there. And then for people that have any kind of gum issues, like receiving gums or gum bleeding, gum disease, it's fantastic for the gums. But for me, I also leave it on my throat area, and I kind of swallow it as slowly as possible. And for the past 6 years, I have never had a sore throat, which is just it's a blessing,
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's great. Yeah, I've had a chance to use it now for I don't know, 5 months or so maybe, and
nice.
I've used it most days. There's sometimes when I'm traveling where I don't have it with me for whatever reason, but most days I've used it. I would say that what I noticed initially with it was really a boost in energy, right? And I think this is a common report. Like you take it and then I don't know, I'm going to say the first week or 10 days, there was like this really very noticeable boost in energy with taking it. And then that sort of started to plateau, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the other benefits, started to come through. I had a little infectious area that cleared up and some other stuff that just kind of went away and things like that, which is just kind of interesting to notice, right? I don't think I'm going to grow my hair back, but...
the hair follicles are unfortunately sort of long gone. Then
That's right.
Yeah, but in terms of the energy wise, what we have noticed was that because it is anti-inflammatory, and so a lot of people that typically, for example, have type 2 diabetes, and they're basically their cells aren't able to, I guess, sort of process the insulin that the pancreas produces. What they do find is that within the very first week is that inflammation is gone. And so suddenly, the body is actually using more effectively the actual insulin and converting, all those sugars into energy. And they do see an energy boost as well. So we actually had a study in the British Journal of Nutrition, and particularly on obese subjects.
Okay.
And so 2 months later, they all saw a reduction in weight loss, fatty liver, bad cholesterol, and visceral fat as well. So.
Fascinating. That's interesting. Tell us a little bit about how they were using it. Were they using like a certain number of drops or a dropper full? They were using it once a day, twice a day, in the morning, in the evening. Tell us what was going on there.
Yeah, they were being fed about 2 full droppers per day of Fountain of Life. And so, it'll actually tell you.
Was that 2 droppers at the same time, or was it spread out? 1 dropper in the morning, 1 in the evening?
Yeah, it's like 1 of these in the morning and 1 at night, essentially. Okay. So 2 full droppers. And so you can actually see here that 1 full dropper has about 40 drops. And so that's equivalent to about 50 milligrams of lignans. And just FYI for the audience, scientists do recommend on a daily basis to get an intake of at least 100 milligrams of lignans per day.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in North America, at least, about the average is about 1 milligram per day. And that's because if you were to cook your vegetables, like us Asians, we fry, boil, bake our vegetables. Once you add heat, it destroys the lignans. And this particular one, it can actually, it's not actually active by heat or by the cold weather as well too. So your coffee and your tea is also okay. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you can put it in your coffee and tea. I will tell you that it tastes a little bit like a spruce tree. It doesn't taste like, I don't know. I mean, it's if you've ever tasted sap, when I was a kid, you'd put your finger on something and stick it in your mouth just to see what happened, right? It doesn't taste. It doesn't taste quite like that. Sap was really quite bitter, but this does have a little bit of that. I don't know. There's like a floral essence to it. It's kind of like the essence of a pine tree is kind of what it reminds me of.
Yes,
right?
So, and what's also really interesting too is that people that typically what we've seen. And we have a huge community of Chinese medicine practitioners, and what they're telling me is that, with the 5 mouth taste buds, that bitter is usually the one that is most beneficial. Bitter foods are typically good for you. And what they're finding is that if you find it bitter initially, it usually means that your body might be slightly more acidic. And so when you actually, you react more strongly to it. But then after about 2-3 weeks, everyone kind of notices that the taste becomes more sweet. So we found actually some people are able to almost like balance their taste buds. And even we have some smokers that have now said that because of the taste of it, they stopped smoking too as a side perk potentially.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. You're not going to make a claim about that for quitting.
No, for sure.
Right. But yeah, interesting. What have people struggled with in terms of taking this? Has there been any reported side effects to it, or upset stomach, or diarrhea, or headache, or any of that kind of stuff?
The only one that we've seen, and it's very, very extremely rare, is if people have an allergy to trees, and so it's not a common thing. And there's like thousands of trees, and so if you're allergic to a pine tree, it might not mean that you're allergic to a Norwegian spruce tree, but we've had so some people, they end up having perhaps some some itchiness or some hives, and so but the same people that we've had, a few of them have actually just lowered the dosage and put it in their water, they just kept going with it for a few months, and eventually they realized that they were able to take it. In terms of a direct, side effect, there are no side effects. It's just a natural product. However, it will sort of help you detox, as an antioxidant. And so you might see a healing process happening where when you detox, it's either through your urine, your feces, or through your sweat pores. So some people might get some itchiness. It really just helps to regulate your body. So some might feel more tired, some might feel more energy, some might get some itchiness, some might have diarrhea, some might have constipation, a little bit. But in the end, we always tell our customers, whatever you're feeling, as long as you're not having hives break out everywhere, it's good for you. It's doing its job. It's working for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking you could probably combine this with some other detox things also, like some binders or doing a sauna or some things like that to help people detox. Right? Because if you detox relatively quickly, of course, you can get a reaction to that, to the toxins being released, if you will. And that happens with weight loss. It happens with detox protocols also. Certainly with ozone, some other things. So just be aware of that if you're going to use it. That's interesting. So, how do you recommend that people take this? Is it a dropper full twice a day, or a number of drops each day, or is there a tapering dose to it, or how does it work?
Yeah, so basically, we always suggest people, especially if they have some particular health issue, just to sort of ease your way into it. And so what I suggest personally is start with about 10 drops, which is about a quarter of the full tube, about 10 drops, 2 to 3 times per day, just to start off, and as each week goes by, go from 10 drops 3 times daily to 20 drops. And the goal, though, for sure, is to get to about, the 2 full droppers. Full one, twice per day is the goal to go. And however, we've had people that, have come to us with, stage 4 cancers, or stage 3. And one of them, they were taking about 9 full droppers per day, and they're still alive today. And so that's more of an excessive, they're in a rush. They have a time limit going on here. But, for regular maintenance, 2 full droppers per day is a very good amount to be taking.
Got it. And the bottle, how many dropperfuls are in a bottle, basically?
Yes, great question. So there's about 30 full dropperfuls.
Okay.
And so there's about 1,200 drops in a bottle. And 1 full squeeze is about 40 drops. So you get about 30 of these total.
Got it. Okay.
But we have had, some countries, especially coming back from Asia, Dr. Gladden, Thailand and the Philippines and, some countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, where money is tight, they'll just use 10 drops per day and have that bottle last them, 4 months. And they still are seeing benefits, right? So I think it kind of depends on your budget. But for the average person, I think they can definitely afford it. It's not expensive.
Cool. All right. Well, that's interesting. So, and how is this sourced? I think there's a story here around how this is sourced, right? It's kind of sustainably sourced from these spruce trees in Finland, or what's happening there?
Great question. One of the common questions we had, especially when we opened up, into the China market, and of course, we're looking at India right now, is that do you have enough to go around for everybody, right?
Right.
And so one of the really cool things about Finland and Norway is that they have, for many generations now, their own tree restoration process. And so in short, and we also don't even cut the trees down, by the way, for the viewers. We actually just gather the branches. Okay. And so if you think about all of the different mining and lumber mill companies out there who only want the actual core stump, right? To them, they don't want the branches, but to us, that's gold right there. Right. And so, there's basically going to be an infinite supply of this, And in terms of the actual way of making the product, and that is part of, I guess, the patents that we have in this product. And it's I guess one hint is almost kind of like making wine. You can't just extract it and kind of package it, or you can't. It's not like an oil where you just heat it up and you kind of drip it out. It's a little bit of a slower process, but you have Our company had actually invested into growing the actual factory about 500%, 500 times, and so now we have no supply issues whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And what about the guy in Finland that kind of made the original discovery with the branch in the freezer?
Yeah.
How did he get to the point where he isolated this? Did he go through like a chemical analysis or mass spec, or what was the story there?
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, it seems like everyone in Finland, his wife, his daughter, his son, the in-laws, son-in-law, they're all scientists, and so,
Okay.
and he actually, of course, has other projects that he does with major, I guess, sort of huge pharma companies. And so, he's worked, I guess, essentially with some of his connections to find a way to actually extract it and put it into a form. And so he's gone through several, I guess, evolutions of this product.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that in this product here, there's not just one lignan. There's actually 7 different lignans in here, but Health Canada's regulations is put the main one that has the most in there, which is the 7-hydroxymethylmethicillin. But there are 7 lignans, and the way that he put the 7 lignans together is what makes it really special. So that's also part of his, the scientist minds.
Yes.
And so, yeah, just as far as I can go with that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's interesting. It'd be interesting to talk to him and see why he chose those and put those together in the way that he did. We know in biology that, getting the combination of either the right sequence or the right combination of things can make a massive difference in the efficacy of anything, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And, we do have a document that we prepared for a lot of the people that like the science. It's a Google Drive document. It's read-only, but it has links to lignan researches from Alzheimer's A down to, Z. And so we have it available for everyone as well. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can put that in the show notes. If you can send Leo a copy of that.
We'll do for sure.
And put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Now we also do have a lot of, testimonials, so I'm not sure if we have time for that, but we can always, share testimonials that we have. We've had just insane ones, like lupus, MS to, diabetes with, amputations and being saved from that. So it's quite a remarkable product.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. I'm not dealing with any of those life-threatening things. And I've been probably using about, 10 to 15 drops a day is kind of what I've been doing. But yeah, it's intriguing. It's really an intriguing product. We're getting some experience with it now with our clients, and so we're kind of waiting to see how it works for them.
We've all seen that, especially for the immune system, it really helps to regulate the immune system. People sometimes get sort of confused between trying to buy a product that can boost their immune system, but what they really need to have is a product that can regulate their immune system, the T1, T2 helper cells. And so we've seen great results with things like, alopecia, which is an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
Even things like people on dialysis, with kidney failures, that kind of stuff too. So it seems to be just repairing all of the parts of your body. So a friend of mine had lupus, where she was on, all these drugs per day. She felt tired all the time. Got on the product, only using 5 drops per day. I encouraged her to use more, but she had a budget. It was 5 drops per day. And about a year later, she's now off of her drugs and just is using Fountain of Life, right?
Nice. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible. So obviously there's no claims being made here, but if you're interested to try this, you might find some interesting results. So good stuff.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rene, it's been really a pleasure to chat with you. How do people get a hold of this? How do they find you? We just so you know, it's available in the Gladden Longevity shop, actually. So we carry it.
That would be the best way, is just to go into the Gladden Longevity, shop and buy it there. And any information that you have, I can leave my contact information, of course, with this podcast. And again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that they may have. So we have a whole team of scientists, and
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Good, and we'll get some of the references and things in the show notes as well. So good.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, one thing I forgot to mention, I know that recently on the rise is things like breast cancer as well too, and one of the things that we found out is that on the breast cancer cell where you have these receptors, is that if those receptors on the breast cancer cells are filled with your own body's estrogen, then it might cause 1,000 cell divisions. And there's a study done by Lillian Thompson from the University of Toronto, and she found that if that same receptor is plugged by the fountain of life phytoestrogen, that it actually stops the cancer from spreading.
Interesting.
We've also had enough studies that fountain of life or lignans in general can help to actually, induce apoptosis.
Okay.
Which is where you
cell death, just so the audience knows, this is where you cause a cell to kind of kill itself. It's like suicide.
Yeah. The cancer cells, right? Yeah, to regenerate again, essentially. Yeah. And it also can prevent metastasis, which is the spreading of the cancer. So it kind of attacks cancer. Again, no claims are made here, but on 4 different ways. Blocking those receptors, the apoptosis, metastasis, and of course the antioxidants with the free radicals. So
nice. What about prostate cancer? Any stories there?
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is that the main so remember the Estee Lauder formulator who knew the scientist. So they actually had a friend that had actually a prostate cancer at stage 3, and so they got his friend to start drinking the product before it became Fountain of Life. Yeah, and that person is still alive today. So when it comes to especially hormone cancers, it's very, very effective at helping with that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. What about anything related to, long haul symptoms from COVID or Lyme or any of those kinds of things? Any information?
We had actually, myself personally, when I had done my 2 COVID shots initially on, I'm 43 right now, but for me, I never used to have any problems breathing, and so I play a lot of sports too. By the way, so I could in badminton. I used to be like top 4 in Canada. Yeah. But suddenly after the COVID shots, I would be like out of breath sometimes. Right. And I'm like, what's going on here? I'm having like a heart attack or something like that, And so for the longest time, I stayed for a good year and a half. I kept having this. And so I just kept using Fountain of Life, and today it's completely gone. Like mind you, I've stopped taking booster shots or it's past that time now. Yeah, we have had some other people that have had it seems like lung issues with breathing.
That's right,
being tired, and this does seem to help as long as you stop.
We've seen that in our practice. We measure lung volumes for everybody, and we can see that when they either get COVID or they've had a vaccination or a booster, that their lung volumes drop and their VO2 max goes down.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so then the question is, well, how do you rebuild that? Right. So we've been able to rebuild it for people, but a Fountain of Life may be a really nice adjunct for that. So if you're right to help with that process.
They had a testimonial of a gentleman that had, the lung test where you try to suck his ball up the tube. Yeah. And your lungs are strong. The ball goes to the very top, right? And just using it at the wall for a few months, from the ball barely moving at the bottom, he's able to get the ball up the very top again. So
nice.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Really interesting. Well, cool. Well, Rene, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate your time and the work that you're doing, your dedication to this and your passion for it. So it's good stuff.
Again, thank you, Dr. Gladden. I think that your community is really blessed to have you and what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing. And so
we love it. Yeah, we love it. So we love what we're doing. It's fun to see people get better.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. If you would like more information on what we've discussed or other topics, please reference the show notes or go to GladdenLongevityPodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching Gladden Longevity. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to get future episodes delivered to you and share our podcast or this episode with someone in your life that you may find benefit. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode. The Gladden Longevity Podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The use of any information and materials linked to this podcast is at the listener's own risk.